At least 20 coaches of the Sabarmati Express derailed between Kanpur and Bhimsen stations in Uttar Pradesh early this morning. Fortunately, the incident resulted in no injuries or fatalities. The Railway Ministry has announced the cancellation of 7 trains and the diversion of at least 3 trains due to this accident. As soon as the trains derailed, help was arranged. Emergency services, including buses and other trains, were arranged to transport the passengers to Kanpur. Well, the devastating incident comes in India, where the country is seeing an increasing number of train mishaps that have in the past year and a few months inflicted tremendous amounts of damages to both life and property. The incident of derailment is reported to have occurred due to objects placed on the track, as per the Railway Ministry. Ashwini Vaishnav, while investigations are still in the go, has also said that this is something which is probable. The probe is also underway, with the IB and the UP police taking charge of the matter completely. And what also must be taken into consideration is not just the fact that someone attempted to tamper with the railway tracks, but also the fact that this is not the first instance of such tampering taking place. Earlier as well, the tracks of trains like the Vande Bharat have seen placements of objects, including iron poles on the track. Cognizance also must be taken of the fact that just about 2 hours from the derailment, a Patna-Indore train had passed smoothly through the very same tracks, which means that it was only done by someone after this particular train had passed. The incident makes a plethora of questions pop up in our head with reference to the functioning of railways and the role of miscreants in tampering with a system which is trying to operate. And some of these questions are these attempts to derail trains coordinated? Question 2, should we probe links between Vande Bharat, vandalism and derailments? Question 3, if coordinated, would this be an open war on Indian railways, perhaps an open war on the Indian system as well? And question 4, should India probe all recent train accidents? And lastly, how do we ensure the safety of passengers from such accidents and incidents? We'll talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show is Brigadier B.K. Khanna, defense expert. Also joining us on the show is DGP B.L. Vohra, terror security expert. Pathikrit Pain, international affairs expert, joins us on the show as well. And last but by no means the least, Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, with us on the show as well. All right, Professor Nalapat, I'll begin with you. Sherlock Holmes said that, you're not allowed to believe in coincidences. A lot of these accidents have happened in the last few months alone, sir. There have been months and months which have gone by without any derailments, without any loss to life or property when it comes to the railway. But this is something which has become very, very frequent. And one is supposed to, or rather inclined to think that there is perhaps, like the Indian saying goes, dal mein kuch kala hai. Where do you see the situation poised at this point in time? We cannot continue to have these derailments. We cannot continue to, in fact, malign the reputation that the Indian Railways has collected over the last few decades. It only got better in the last few years, Professor Nalapat, because of trains like Vande Bharat. But this seems to be, in fact, a fading image or reputation of the Indian Railways. What can be done here, sir?
Well, Vineet, I'd like to say that you are quite right. There is a broader scheme at work, and that broader scheme is to slow down the pace of growth of India and to create an impression, yes, of course, railways are unsafe, which is a very common means of transportation for tens and hundreds of millions of citizens, and basically that India is a country prone to accidents. Now, all that it's part of a design, and it's part of what I would call, we have long called, in fact, I'm happy to say, after many, many years of identifying the Sino-Wahhabi lobby as a threat to Indian security and, frankly, as a threat to international security. That was during the 1990s. But people in the Clinton administration said, no, nonsense. And later on, people here, some of them even now say, oh, there's no such thing. China can be made a friend. The Wahhabi can be made a friend. Wahhabis are not Muslim, let me tell you. Wahhabis are fanatics. They call themselves Muslim, but they're not Muslim. So I'd like to say, Vineet, there is a Sino-Wahhabi effort to derail India. By Sino, I don't mean the Chinese or Chinese people. They're a great people. But the the top rungs of the Chinese Communist Party. And that game plan includes this kind of derailment of a very important function. And it's not difficult. Now, it's very clear the Sabarmati Express was a target. A less important train possibly would have attracted less attention. I don't think it would, but still, Sabarmati Express is an iconic train. Going to, I mean, we have memories of Mahatma Gandhi in this Sabarmati Express. We have memories of peace and non-violence in the Sabarmati Express, and they did that. So I'd like to say, Vineet, this is part of a Sino-Wahhabi activity, and that activity has got to be confronted. And may I say, there will be hundreds of sleeper cells in India, hundreds and thousands of active cells in India. It's going to be a huge job, but it's a job that we cannot flinch from doing. And the first line of defense is the people of India, and that they have to ensure that they keep an eye out for suspicious activity. And for example, the man who plays this kind of a track on a track, I mean, an alert public should have nabbed him, caught him, and then basically that would have been very helpful. So next time around, ladies and gentlemen, citizens of Bharat, next time around you see this kind of activity afoot, catch the person concerned, hold him, catch him, so that he can be questioned and the truth uncovered as to who his handlers are. Of course, down the line, the real handlers will be there. At least 2-3 levels we can discover in this manner. Thank you, Vineet.
Here that we are trying to deal with, but these accidents are definitely not doing much to the confidence of the travelers, the passengers, more so the railway ministry. Pathikrit?
Oh, sorry, I could not.
That's for you,
Vineet, let me
Pathikrit.
tell you. Yeah, Vinit, am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, let me start with something very critical. There are efforts being made from whether our eastern part or the western hemisphere to curtail India's growth. And you would see there are fault lines which are being targeted, whether it's on caste, creed, religion, region, institutions, industry, all are being targeted. And I see no reason why critical infrastructure will not be targeted. So railway is one of the most critical infrastructure of the country, of any country. And there are efforts which we see that there are attempts being made to derail railways. There are attempts being made to question the government. And everything that is happening, primarily one of the reasons why we have not been able to deal with it is because we do not have something called a Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. A few weeks back in the Sunday Guardian, I came out with an article talking about the importance of India having a Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, wherein you define what your critical infrastructures are, which are extremely essential for running any country and without which there would be a debilitating impact on the country's economy. Once you define those infrastructures, you ensure that the right kind of protection is given to them. Even if it's necessary, you impose a cess for that. Look at the difference. What is happening in the railway will not happen in the airports. Why? Because in the airports, you have to keep the global benchmark of security. In case of railway, what happens? Somebody puts a boulder on the railway track, it is passed off as a mischief and not as an act of sabotage. It is passed off as a mistake and not as an act of terror. And this is where, whether it is, our telecom infrastructure or railway infrastructure, or it is our commercial infrastructure, industrial infrastructure, irrespective of whether it is in the private sector or the government, have to be protected as equally as defense infrastructures or government infrastructures are protected. Because you cannot become a $5 trillion economy if you are constantly, targeted in your critical infrastructure. Number one, many of the Western countries today have a Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. We do not have it. Number two, we don't have the rules of engagement clear. Imagine this, Vinay, if 500 people attack a railway, a train or a railway station, what are the rules of engagement for the railway protection force over there? Are they allowed to shoot them at will? No. So what is he supposed to do? During the anti-CAA protest, we have seen how the train lines were burned down, stations were burned down. And the police and the law enforcement agencies were helpless because they don't know how to deal with the mob. And our adversaries know how to weaponize the mob today. They're using the mob to burn down a train. They're using the mob to burn down a station. They're using the mob to pelt stones at Vande Bharat so that people get scared to travel in that world-class train. Now, unless you define your critical infrastructure and you raise the bar of consequence for attack or sabotage on that, you will not be able to protect your today's infrastructure or your future economic prospects. And this is not an easy thing to do. As Professor Nalapat mentioned, there are hundreds of sleeper cells. You need a concerted effort involving the center, the state, with the right kind of laws to back them. We do not have the right kind of laws today. If a mob of 500 people attack, does it come under UAPA? I don't know. I'm not sure. It is considered a mob attack. So we need to define that anything that happens on railway, during telecom infrastructure getting targeted, data centers getting targeted, railway police stations getting targeted, dangerous trends. And this will increase. So I think we need to start from the brass tracks in terms of defining critical infrastructure and have a no-nonsense approach. Anybody putting a boulder on a railway track, threatening the life of hundreds of people, should be dealt as a terrorist. Or else it will continue, because if you continue to pass it off as a mischief by a bacha. Because the bacha is being used here. Back to you.
Mr. Vora, Pathakrit is absolutely right. There has to be a deterrence created, whether it's the UAPA or it's any other law, when it comes to attacking or wishing harm to our critical infrastructure. There doesn't seem to be, an organized outlook in terms of deterring it.
India has been under attack since independence. There have been enemies from outside and from within who are friends with the people outside. And that trend continues till date. The characters may have changed, the organizations may have changed, but this trend is there and it will continue. Let us be very clear on that, number one. Number two, creating problems like these on the tracks of the railways is nothing new. It has been happening in India. About more than 20 years ago, I was IG BSF in Jammu, and at that time also, I remember the trains, they had these kind of boulders on the tracks, and of course they were emanating from Pakistan, and power grid and other situations and other installations were also targeted. Now, coming specifically to this, see, there are hundreds of sleeper cells, as Professor Madhav Nalapat said, and rightly so. See, we succeed a lot, but we don't know in the public domain, it doesn't come. 99 times we succeed, once we fail, and it is natural, it can happen anywhere in the world. But it doesn't excuse us from not taking further action. We have to take. Now, talking of the railways infrastructure and comparing it with the airports, as my friend did that, let me tell you, by air the VIPs travel. By trains, the common man travels. That is one difference. Second, see, there is a problem with the jurisdiction of the RPF and the local police. RPF is meant only for the railways property, whereas the local police looks after the other jurisdiction. Now, this dichotomy has been going on for a very long time, and it's time that it is abolished altogether. This is not happening. And let me tell you, RPF started as a watch and ward force many, many years ago. only in 1953 or so it was rechristened as Railway Protection Force, but it is not really a paramilitary force. It's not really that well trained. It is not really that well trained in investigation. All these issues are there. So fresh look is required, and I think many have recommended this many years ago, and it has been happening. But somehow, I think the priorities are missing. I think in the change scenario, priorities will have to change. Regarding imposition of UP and all, I think that's a matter of investigation. It can be done even now. I don't think it's that difficult. But point is catching the miscreant. It's very easy in the railway tracks, spread over, there's thousands and thousands of kilometers. It's not easy to put even cameras and find out people, but it doesn't mean that we should not do something. Certainly, human can work on this and it should be done. So, coming to the conclusion of the points that I am making is that we continue to be alert is very, very important. We must not only make our laws strong, we must change the forces, their command structure, their mandate, their training, and there should be structural changes in the security of people in uniform, and I'm especially referring to the RPF in this context. And I think these things will continue. It's a running battle. We will have to continue with this. But I think we have had an upper hand so far. And fortunately, in this case, there's no loss of life. That is one good thing that has happened. But there's no excuse for not being vigilant. Vineet.
All right, absolutely. Great points there. Brigadier Khanna, how do you see this situation? You can't put CCTV cameras on every track. There are thousands and lakhs of miles and kilometers to be covered. But, once again, going back, there seems to be a concerted effort to tire India or to malign India's reputation when it comes to our railways and our critical infrastructure. The government must take cognizance of this. What, according to you, should they be doing now?
No, in fact, first, there are two aspects to it. One is that we have to find out, who are these sources. We are saying it, okay, external sources are there, who are those? Let's identify them with some examples. If you see, in fact, I'm not going to go back. I'm going to go back only to 2020. What happened in Galwan Valley? Galwan Valley was testing the, strength of India by the Chinese. Because they had seen it in 1967, what had happened there in Sikkim. And there, of course, they got a bloody nose there. And in Galwan was, in fact, testing strength. They knew, it is very difficult for them to, in fact, bring the India into under their cover. What to do? The thing is that one is that encirclement, and secondly also create certain, in fact, unrest within India. They had a ready-made proxy. No, they know it. In fact, Pakistan, as ISIS, they are not able to spend that money. Money is going to come from China. So it is a Pakistan-Chinese chapter. So they are. This is Pakistani the ISI, they have got a sleeping cells there here in India. A number of them also. So, that is one thing which is our police and intelligence services, they have to identify them only. Where are they? And not only whenever accident it takes place, okay, then only they start taking it. Let's have it, in fact, right in the beginning only, in fact, where they only identify them only, and then those sleeping cells are the one or something, they are given the incentive. And they, of course, for this, of course, I'm putting this particular stone, a boulder, whatever it is here. So they must have been given 5,000, 4,000, good enough. As far as he's concerned, he's got for 5,000 good. So who is this person who is going to go? Who could have been done? Which is villages which is nearby? Which are the one, of course, the one. So the local police will be knowing much better. They have got much intelligence. They can, so they can easily. Nobody can come from outside. This thing, say from Delhi or say from Bombay, and then do it there. So they will be knowing it. They will be able to. So hence, this is very detailed. Second, my point. This thing is that yes, first I think it's the nexus between China, proxy of this thing, Pakistan, and the sleeper cell. This is the nexus. The second is that what do we do? One is that my recommendation would be there. Overall, whatever in the last about 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever has happened there, let's take it this year only, wherever the accident has taken it, let's have an overview of it only and have a pretty study. Find out as to what are the various causes which has taken this thing there, and then of course we'll find a solution after that only. The overall study is very, very important. To know about it only. I mean, are we going the right track? No. Thirdly, there's the technology. My third recommendation will be technology. Like we have got the technology development. Like we know, in fact, about this system that of course, collusion will not take place. Similarly, some technology has to be developed. Now that we know where the problem lies there only, can we have some system or something that like they have the sensor as to find out as to what this thing anti-collusion doesn't take place. Any boulder, anything which also automatically get away or something, some system or something also will be there. And I'm sure with the new technology coming up, AI, new technology coming, so something can come up. This is some area of research which can be done, which will be there. Not only now, only because we know it. In the future also, such things will happen.
Okay, we've run out of time as well. We'll take concluding thoughts from all our guests, starting with Professor Nalapat.
Look, Vineet, laws are important. Clear laws are even more important, but so is enforcement. And that is where we still have a problem. Because enforcement is lax in certain areas. For example, narcotic smuggling continues to take place in the border areas. People smuggling continues to take place in the eastern part on a large scale. Why? Because of corruption. And this is something that we have to tackle. We cannot ignore it. We cannot avoid it. So I think we need enforcement is the key here. And for that, accountability is the key. And you have to have laws in place, and which the courts will clearly interpret, that ensure that any security personnel or any other government personnel who is presenting through corruption a threat to national security, whether it's terror, narcotics, people smuggling, even gold smuggling, such people should be taken out of the service at a minimum, if not prosecuted, removed from service summarily. And I think we need to have procedures for that. Otherwise, I can tell you, Vinny, we will have good laws, and if we have bad enforcement, there's no point in these laws. Thank you.
Pathakrit?
Look, Vineet, we had been facing terrorism for a long time, but it only after 26/11 NIA was formed, and it has a more than 90% success rate in terms of cracking the cases. So the issue is this: do we accept that we need to save critical infrastructures, or we go ahead with the chalta hai approach ki ye 30 saal 40 saal se chal raha hai, nahi baat kuch nahi. The fact is this: it's not impossible to surveil the track lines, because between every two stations there are these trackmans and the linesman whose job is to actually ensure that lines, signals, everything is intact. All you need to do is to give them the right kind of technological equipment. The railways have been acquiring a lot of these drones. A little bit of that can be imposed in terms of keeping an eye. Last but not the least, when the NIA tells the local police to do investigation, the local police actually jumps up and does something. Because you don't have a critical infrastructure protection act, because we don't realize that it is important to protect the critical infrastructure, there is nothing from the top telling the local state police that be rest assured it is taken care of. That's where the problem is. So I think we need a new approach in terms of dealing with it, because every incident like this has a negative impact on India's economic prospect, because it will be shown in a negative way in the Western world and in the Eastern world. So it is not just done for the sake of it. There are ulterior motives. So I think we need a completely new approach, or else people will continue to die if we don't, have a completely new approach in terms of it, and we continue to presume that it has happened for a long time. So nothing new about it. Back to you.
All right. Mr. Vora?
We need a couple of points. Number one, we don't even have a national security policy till date in this country. I mean, it is so shameful in a way, which all countries have. Police reforms is number two. Unless we undertake police reforms, structural reforms in all the forces, nothing is going to happen. We have been talking about it for ages, but it is not happening. And third, a point which Prime Minister made on the Independence Day speech was that when people are punished, no publicity is given. When the crime is committed, there is a lot of noise all over in the media and everywhere. So I think this is very important. Stringent punishment not only should be given but should be publicized, because only then it will act as a deterrent. But that doesn't happen at all. The punishment gets lost because it takes ages. And you know what's happening to the entire criminal justice system. Judiciary, 5 crore cases are pending today. 5 crores. So I think the whole system needs a complete overhaul. If you only blame intelligence agencies and this force and that force, that will not work. It's going to be a holistic approach.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.